Hey, so I just got back from Japan where I got to try out some motion rigs. One of them was on the triple screens and one was in VR, and I'm here to tell you all about my impressions of them. Everything that I'm about to show you happened at a place called Red, which is kind of like a 21st century gaming arcade that's right below the Tokyo Tower. I first found out about it because I saw it on the F1 broadcast when Lando Norris and Ted Kravitz went there just before the Japanese Grand Prix last year, and we got to watch their beautiful bromance unfold. Most of the 5th floor is dedicated to sim racing, and there's heaps of different rigs in there. The first one that we tried had what's called a seat mover. So that gives you 2 degrees of freedom, is the technical terminology, and that basically means that you have front and back pitch and side to side roll as well. There's actually 6 possible degrees of motion. So in comparison, it's a relatively simple system, but that's not to say that this stuff wasn't high end. There's a direct drive wheel on the rig. They even had hydraulic pedals, and those pedals alone would set you back 1,500 Australian dollars. So we're not messing around. And I'll tell you now that the benefits of a motion rig were immediately obvious to me. As an example, I found myself lifting my foot off the throttle mid-corner, and I felt the whole weight of the car transitioning to the front end of the car, really upsetting the balance of it. And yes, there's ways of gauging that without motion, but nothing that's as obvious and as immediate as that. The other really helpful thing was feeling how hard I was braking. So as I apply the brake pedal, the seat itself actually tips forward and sort of pushes you forward. And yeah, there's a little bit of a calibration process of understanding how much seat tip equates to how much brake pressure, but you quickly get used to that. And it's awesome having an additional point of feedback, because otherwise you're normally just reliant almost entirely on the muscle memory in your leg and how hard you're pushing against that pedal. Plus, maybe a few audio and visual cues from the game, but they're not as easy to process or as kind of instinctual as feeling your body moving in response to how hard you're braking. The one downside of this style of rig with the seat mover is that the screen stays stationary and the wheel and the pedal distance to your seat is constantly changing, which isn't ideal. So that brings us to rig number 2, where we now have 4 linear actuators, 1 on each corner, and that means that the entire rig itself is moving as one. We no longer have the problem of the pedals and wheels changing distance to us. Plus, we have VR, so we no longer have the problem of the screens remaining stationary while we're moving around. On top of that, by having 4 actuators, we actually get an additional degree of freedom. So on top of what we had before, which was the front and rear pitch and the side-to-side roll, we now have what's called heave, which is a up and down vertical movement as well. And look, I didn't know what I know now about motion rigs, having done a bit more research, so I wasn't super attuned to trying to judge the difference between 2 degrees of freedom versus 3 degrees of freedom. But honestly, going from having just the seat moving to the entire rig and going from the triple screens to the VR made a much bigger difference to my experience than adding the heave motion, I would say. Even on those big, beautiful triple screens, you still feel like you're looking at a picture of a car on the screen, whereas in VR, you really do actually feel like you're inside the car. From the outside, it doesn't look like a lot of motion, doesn't look like a lot's happening, but when you're in the rig, I can confidently say that that was the most immersive experience I've ever had of sim racing, and definitely the closest I've ever come to feeling like I was in a real-life race car. And hey, thanks for watching. It's awesome to explore this crazy world of motion rigs with you. I'd love to hear what you think, or if you have any questions about it, especially now that I'm getting a setup. I'm more than happy to explore this further. So yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.